we are curious for your session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for joining this workshop also. It's always such a pleasure to me to be part of any initiatives that Boris promotes. So he is my testing guru, and even my LinkedIn page still says it, and I'm not willing to change it because he had a huge impact on me and my career. I'm really would love to give you at least a tiny piece of inspiration that I usually get from these type of conferences, and hopefully share some good experiences with you. So we will talk about QA Big Bang. So at the beginning of times, we had nothing in the company. We had no QAs, no testing, no tests, and we need to start from zero. So let's start. QA Big Bang. Well, not this one. Okay, we'll talk about this Big Bang.
Can you make it full screen? Last word.
I can, but yes.
Yeah,
but,
okay. If you are using,
I will have the for now, and then I will switch. Sorry. So we are starting from zero, and I don't know whether it happened to you or not, but usually when you join QA team, usually you have already most of the things more or less set up. But what if you don't? The beginning of times of QA, when there was nothing, and you need to build a functional, complete, and a competent QA department from zero. So to begin, who am I to talk about this? First of all, I'm a passionate QA engineer. I've studied criminal science. Now I'm taking a second bachelor in math, so has nothing directly to do with quality assurance, but I still love what I do. That's why I founded Quality Talks, which is a QA community in Portugal. I had the pleasure to be a QA engineer, a lead QA, head of QA. I had different hats throughout my career, and this actually was the third time that I've built QA department from zero. So 2 times it was for the companies that I worked for, and once I did that as a freelancer, just helping a company setting their QA in the beginning. So let's start a little bit with your feedback. So I would like to know from the audience, have you ever started a QA department from zero? You have a QR code that you can scan on your phone, and you'll have here 2 questions from my side, just because I really need to know if there's someone that I can ask questions in case I don't know how to answer. I might use some help from the audience as well. So please feel free to scan the code. And now Zoom is not allowing me to switch the tab. How cool is that? I'm sorry. Let me see. Maybe that way. Okay. So let me see if you were able to. Okay, so we have so far 100% people that said it. Okay. I was joking. I will not ask you to do the workshop instead of me. You can just feel free to share your experience. Usually how it happens, it can happen in different ways. Sometimes it can happen that you join a startup and they really don't have a QA department yet. It also can happen that you join a company, for example, that used to have outsourced QA teams, and you now need to set up something internally. Or in that case is most common, but not that directly related. You are joining a department, and then you look at things that are in place, and you decide just to delete everything and start from zero. Okay, so we have 13 people. Maybe I'll wait another minute to see, but still we have several people that already did that, which is impressive. Feel
Some
free
people, they ask for the QR code again.
Okay,
If
sure.
you can show one more time.
Yes, I can,
Thank
of course. Thank you. I'll probably leave it here for some time. I need to move my screen because Zoom is okay. 21. People are still joining. It's still quite impressive. 29%, yes. Feel free to reach on LinkedIn and we might share some thoughts on it. I'm super curious about it. I do remember the first time I had to do it. I was working for a company as a customer success engineer for 3 months, and I was granted a title of head of QA, and I had to set everything up from zero. And I had only less than 2 years of experience in the QA field after my bachelor in criminal science. So it was a big challenge, just not to use any bad words. And I do remember that I didn't know where I could get any information on that. I have read some books that didn't help me much. I have checked some blogs. I even contacted some people in the field that inspired me somehow throughout my career, and I was trying to figure out what I need to do and where I should start. Okay, so 32% yes and 68% no. Let's move to the second part, to the second question, because actually that one is more interesting to me. So what we should define for QA? We can see training plan, career plan, process, tools. Okay, I see two options that I did not include directly. So that's interesting. We are thinking about career nowadays. Feel free to, you don't need to submit all the 5 things, just feel free to write down anything that comes to your mind. So we have no QA department. We might have some tests, but we have no QA department. So what should we guarantee and what we should tackle in the beginning? Process is good, tools is good. What else? I'll share also my answers throughout the workshop, don't worry. Okay, strategy, making better outcomes, testing environments, great one, purpose, responsibilities. You guys know everything, but you don't need to do this workshop. Design scenarios, outcomes, great, scope, expectations, KPIs, career plan, wow. Tools, but tools is bigger, is getting bigger comparing to the others. And strategy, of course, yeah, those are the 2 key takeaways that we need to guarantee. Gain quality, team, education. Yes, definitely. Awesome. Routine, design process, training plan. Amazing. Okay. Strategy, tool, and process are the winning ones for now. Definition of quality, definitely, for sure, yes. Team, making better, preventing mistakes, education of what QA is, sure. It's getting nice. I'm glad we are recording this. Okay. Approver, expectations, gain confidence, good organization, good communication skills. Okay. I'll give another minute just for you to complete in case there's somebody that still want to submit your answers, and then we'll jump right in to the rest of the presentation. Okay. Routine, preventing mistakes, discover defects, communication with devs, definitely. Awesome. Great options. I will make sure that I keep this word cloud. Okay, finding bugs. Great. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing this. And there are, of course, several things that I did not include directly in the workshop today, but definitely all of them are super valid and are great things that we definitely should guarantee that we have well defined in our QA department for sure. So thank you for sharing. And of course, as in any workshop, I'm also learning from you, which is amazing. It's both sides, works both sides. So great. Critical mind, confidence, close to VA. Okay, of course. So let's then move to the next one. Okay, so now we have here this. Okay, so usually, as I was saying, at least from my experience, you don't join the company directly as a director of QA right away with endless resources, endless possibilities, a big team, everyone ready just to listen to you and implement right away anything that you say. So usually you start as a first QA in the department, or you are starting with a team that was used to a different process or a different strategy. And you find out that the processes, you either don't have them at all, or the ones that you have, you really need to change them radically because things that we were doing were not working. Usually there's also lack of documentation, most of the times no tooling implemented, and you start to define those. But of course, there's no universal solution. So I would say, okay, if you join as a QA to a company that has no QA department, or you need to build something from scratch, just pick Selenium, pick TestRail, and you're ready to go and you have your department set. That is not true. Again, at least from my experience, I'm not a DevOps expert, but I have a friend, for example, he's an SRE. And he's built an amazing solution, custom made, that now he just can implement to any company that needs an SRE DevOps mindset and that don't have any. So if he's starting from zero. Throughout my career, I couldn't do the same for QA because there are different things, there are different necessities, there are different challenges. And the thing about QA is that we are in the middle between the technical aspects and product business. So we need to succeed at both. We need to be good at understanding our business and what we are delivering. And also most of the times when it comes to technical questions. So I wouldn't recommend to have like a universal solution, one thing that just suits any company, any QA department. And of course, you start and you have like tons of things that you need to think of and define because you don't have any guideline. You have the notion of what you need to implement, but of course, you don't know exactly what. Again, because we don't have that universal solution that we can just apply to any company that we work for. So, and because Paris asked me, let me try to... Sorry, I will try to present it differently. Okay, I think now it should be better. So where should we begin and what we should start to define? First of all, of course, we need to understand what is our deliverable. And we will come to that in more detail in a second. Then we need to define what is the face of our product, of our deliverable. Then what are challenges and constraints? What resources do we have? And then starting from that, from those baselines, we can start building our strategy. So first of all, what we need to test, and before we think how we can test things, I would definitely recommend to think what and why. Are we building a software in the right way? Are we building the right software? And that's also something that Boris, for example, noted yesterday in his talk, that if we are joining a company that it has just a small MVP that is not in production, and we're just trying to understand whether somebody will pay for it or not, maybe before focusing on good test automation, we really need to focus on, are we building the right software in the first place? Will the software answer somebody's needs or not? And then only after that, we can start to think about how we are building. So start by asking what we are building and why we are building it. What is our product? Is it like just an implementation of an idea? Is the idea tested already? Do we have any customers or not? And why we are testing it. So are we testing it because everybody tests things and we definitely need to test it? Or is it because we get too many complaints from the customers? Or just because we feel like we really want to write some automation and we found a place where they are willing to pay for it? What and why? And there's a nice quote: software and cathedrals are much the same. First we build them and then we praise. So in order to guarantee that that doesn't happen, we really need to guarantee that we know what we are testing. We need to guarantee that we know exactly that the software has its own audience. We will have clients. It is a right software for somebody's needs. It can be just a niche, but still. And then we can start thinking about how we are going to test. So the second thing for me that is very important is to understand at which stage we are. Is the product live already or is not? Is it just a small baby or is it just already an adult? Because of course, as for example, in the medical exams, you won't do the same medical exams to a baby, to an adult. So of course, we need to understand what exactly at what phase we are. For example, if we have a startup and we are trying to tackle a good automation suite, probably that is somehow risky because it might happen that our software will change fast. We might have already a client, of course, but at any iteration, at any meeting that we will have with our client, he will most likely request some changes. And our automation, even if we already have some, it needs to be easily adaptable to any changes that we might have. So probably not a robust, big automation suite right from the beginning, probably something like robot frameworks or more keyword driven that will help us being agile also in terms of the testing suite. What are the constraints is another thing that is really important to understand is what can push us back, both as a QA department or a QA team, but also as a company. Is the communication with the stakeholders built in a correct way? Do we have a lot of changes in the code or not? So again, if we are a small product, for example, we will have a lot of changes and we build a big automation suite, this will just be an overkill for us. So we need to understand what are the constraints and what are our challenges. What do we want to achieve with the testing? So going back now to the why, right? So what do we want to achieve and which value we are bringing to the company in the first place, right? So can we provide fast feedback loops? Would it benefit our company? Good reporting to present to the POs? Living documentation, for example, as a QA, for example, working in a BDD, we can do that. So what is our final big master plan and how we can ensure that our company is stable, is growing, and it's making good revenue also, because we have a huge impact on that as well. And of course, which resources do we have? So as most of you mentioned also in our cloud board, team is important, responsibilities are important. So Am I the only QA in the team? Do I have resources? Can I hire more? Who can help me setting the QA? Who can write me the automation suite? Who can write the exploratory checklist, etc., etc. So if I'm the only one, probably I need to reassess my priorities. If I can hire, probably I can think about distribution of the responsibilities. So now let's build a strategy. And to build a strategy, in my opinion, I think we need to tackle at least eight things. So the baseline, the status, test approach, test process, responsibilities, test plan, testing levels and automation strategy, and feature workflow. Of course, many of them that I have here, you mentioned in our cloud world. There's some that somehow incorporate things that you mentioned, and I see here a couple that are a little bit different. So beginning, quality assurance baseline. And it might sound obvious, but if I ask to you what is system testing is and how system testing is different from the end-to-end testing, I can assure you that I will get tons of different answers. Although most of us, we learned from the same books or ISTQB principles, we have seen the syllabus, at least most of us had, and we feel that we know what is what, right? But that is not usually that universal. I've worked for companies where developers would see end-to-end testing completely in a different manner than POs and that QAs. And my first month, and it might sound funny, but my first month of work was basically to explain what for me, or try to understand what for them is end-to-end testing. This is important, and you cannot underestimate that. We need to have a definition of what is what is end-to-end, what is system testing, and who is tackling what, which part of the testing. We know the testing pyramid, and there are many different versions, but the one most known is that we have the unit, the integration, and then the API and UI. So who is tackling which, and where does it start, and where does it finish? So where does my system testing start, where does it finishes? And this is very important, just to guarantee that we are all on the same page. Testing is a part of QA, but there are also tests that are written by developers most of the times, for example, the unit testing. And we really need to understand we are in the same page or not, and how we can ensure that everyone knows what is their role and what they need or expected to do. So the second part is the status. Okay, we now know all the glossary, all the namings, all the definitions for the testing. Now, where do we stand right now? What do we have? What can we reuse? What we should improve? Or if we don't have anything, where should we start? So we really need to define our status as is and the point zero at our Big Bang. Usually the lack of understanding of this complexity, it makes many unconscious people just give up on this testing mission that we might have. And as Vas mentioned in his keynote, and thanks him for a super inspiring keynote as well, we really need to start thinking small. And for me, thinking small is first thinking about what do we have already, and then what will be my first small step. Then after that, we might start thinking bigger and thinking about our test approach. So how we intend to test it. Of course, most of the times this is guided by the approach that we have on development. Of course, if the development works in sprints, then QA will also most likely work in sprints. But we need to think apart from that, what will be our guiding star. So we can do a proactive testing. For example, the test design process is initiated as early as possible. So the well-known shift left. We can have the risk-based testing that we hear so often lately, and we start to identify our main risks. So if we have no test, of course, we need to find a way to prioritize and define what will be our test approach in order to know what we will tackle first, because even if you hire, I don't know, a team of 50, in the beginning, it won't increase your speed. You need to have things well-defined and structured, and some people mentored already in order to be able to scale. You cannot scale from zero. Anything times zero will be zero, right? So you need to start by defining things, by having a scope, having the test approach, maybe mentor a couple of people that then will help others to just continue your legacy of quality approach, testing approach. So defining the test approach is really, really important, because we cannot tackle everything at once. Even if you scale the team crazily, you will not be able to scale that fast in the beginning, as long as you don't have your guiding star, which is your test approach. Then after that, now we are getting to the interesting things. So we have the test process. So what is our methodological workflow? For example, we have at ISTQB an outline defining that we have the test planning and control, test analysis and design, test implementation and execution, evaluating exit criteria and reporting test closure activities. It can be anything. It can be anything that suits your company, your team, and you as a QA manager, QA director, head of QA, or just a QA engineer that is defining this, right? It can be anything, but we just really need to understand what is our methodology, where QA enters to the development cycle. Are we building the tests first and then we have the development? Will we have the, for example, the QA column on our board after the development and after the review and before the deployment? Do we have that? Will I be, I don't know, an embed engineer in the team, so I don't have a dedicated QA column? My task will be just as any development task, and it will go through review and then deployment. This is something really important. And once we have this, we also can then train other people to help with that. Usually, from my experience, having a dedicated QA column is super common, but it leads to bottleneck when you are alone. So at some point, if you have a column for QA, then you need to scale. And this would be more or less the part where you start scaling. But we need to think. For example, from my experience, I had one project when I was the only QA for an entire company for more than a year. And that led to me to just think differently. And it was not that different, come on. But yes, I shifted left testing so hard that I didn't have any QA column. We were working on a TDD, but then any validation that people might need, it was just delegated to any team member. Because if every developer would expect me to validate any task that he or she delivers, it will just lead 40 developers waiting for Lina. It would be crazy. So we need to think about our workflow based on what we can do, based on the team that we have, on the resources that we have, and of course, based on what is our development cycle implemented in the company. Then here we go for the responsibilities. And this was one of the things that you mentioned the most during our question session. So responsibilities, who does what? QA engineer is responsible to define things, but QA engineer can have different roles and different hats. I've seen companies where QA engineers are only gurus or advocators. They only say to developers what kind of tests they need to write. and what level of testing they need to write. So it was mainly as supervisors or advocates that would just check whether everything is in place, but they would not write any tests. I also seen the companies where, for example, QAs would do everything, and they would work in a silo, completely separated from the agile team, and they would just test. And whenever they would have a release, it was 2 days of intense testing, most of the times with the extra working hours, finishing late, especially when it's on Friday. It's just an overkill because you are trying to go on a weekend, but then you need to guarantee that release is good. So we need to understand what are the responsibilities, what role you will have in the team and in the company. And again, this is based in everything that we mentioned before, in terms of the resources that we have, in terms of the company strategy, in terms of the test approach. This will guide you, and this will help you defining what are the responsibilities of each team member. And you should not just have a new universal solution. Again, there's no any. You can be an advocate, you can be an automation engineer, you can be just a manual tester, you can be a person that just writes a script, writes test cases that somebody will automate. It can be anything as long as you preach this, as long as you advocate this, as long as everyone is in the same page, and there are people that can help you with that delegation that you do. So, for example, we know from the Lisa Crispin's talks that she also makes in books that there's a 3 amigos agile approach. So we have business that thinks about what problem we are trying to solve, then the development, how might we build a solution to solve that, and then testing, what about this, and asking questions, what possibly can happen, what can go wrong. So this is one of the approaches where we have an agile team and we are working all together, different roles, and but each role has its own responsibility. Developers write code, POs define the documentation and the mission, and then QA does the validation. But we can do in tons of different manners. And we are also then start to shape our test plan. And for me, it was a little bit difficult in the beginning when I was starting to define a QA department for the first time, not to start with the test plan, because as a QA, I was used to start with the test plan. In any case, just I would join a project, somebody would send me the documentation, I would read it through, I would write tons of test cases that I will then run every sprint. So doing so many things before I actually get to some directly testing related things is difficult. But if we are trying to define something that will be scalable, that will bring value to the business, maybe we can wait for a couple of weeks until we have everything defined and until we have a proper strategy. Because if we are trying to write a test plan and then we think about the test approach and then we find out that we have no resources to do that and developers are not willing to help, then probably our test plan will not be executed 100% every time. So we spend so many time defining it, and then, yeah, we just pray that one day we will have enough team members that will help us to execute everything. And each iteration, we need just to find ways to decide how we will prioritize and test things, because we have such a short amount of time and so many test cases. So I really believe that it is important to think first how, why, and then define all those steps that we talked about. And only after this, now you can write a test plan. You know exactly how much time you have, you know exactly what you are testing, you know what are the critical parts are, what are the possible bottlenecks in the project, because you spend some time investing on that, talking to people, learning from them, learning from different roles, from different stakeholders. So you know exactly what kind of test plan you can rely on. And even if you don't write a complete test plan that will guarantee you 100% coverage, it's okay, because you already should know by now what exactly are the risks, what exactly are the resources, what you can tackle. And with that, you can write a test plan that will be suitable for you now. And I do believe that it is not possible to write, to think that, okay, I will write an extensive test plan today, and maybe one day, in 6 months, in 1 year, we will be able to execute all of these tests, but it's okay if I cannot execute them right now, but at least we have a good coverage. And whenever somebody asks me to test this small feature that is not super important and that we usually do not test, I have a test plan for that. That is correct, but things change fast, especially in the software development. So if we write things today, hoping that we will execute someone in 1 year or even in six months, probably by then you need to rethink your tests. And what usually happens, especially if you automate that, you write those automations to cover all the API endpoints and all possible and impossible use cases, positive and negative scenarios, but then you cannot validate all of them, you silence half of them, and then in 6 months you go back to it. And you feel sorry to delete any tests, because, I mean, it's so much work, either manual tests plan that you wrote or checklist or anything. It was so much work. You spent time reading the documentation, talking to PO, talking to development, defining those test plans, writing them down, documenting everything, or automating them. How can I delete that, right? But it's not, it doesn't make sense anymore to our project. So once we start, and we're starting from zero, let's just focus on first things first, and let's not focus on things that just in case, maybe one day, because things change fast. So, and our resources usually are limited. So writing a comprehensive, super big test plan, maybe it's not the way to go. And of course, for example, if we have good automation skills, or if we have developers helping with automation, or if we have several automation engineers, maybe I don't have, maybe I don't need that extensive, that big, such a big test plan for manual testing. Maybe I can have a couple of checklists, things that probably cannot be automated, or things that just are too time consuming to automate. Again, one example, I was testing a platform for a telecommunications company similar to Netflix. Let's imagine Netflix, okay? So what usually happens is that after a while, you need to request for a video certificate. Every 15-30 minutes, you need to guarantee that that request is sent, because we need to guarantee that your account is not being used in several devices at the same time. There's a limit. How they limit it? By validating that certificate. So, for example, I had to test that, but how would I automate that after 30 minutes of video watching, I still had my video and my audio, everything was fine. I was watching the right movie, I had sound, and it was not freeze, etc., etc. In terms of the effort, it's just crazy. So, right, so maybe it's easier for us just to automate all the path to it, how I can subscribe, how I can download the video, how I can click on watch, and then just have this small checklist, validated certificate is being requested after 50 minutes, just maybe as manual validation. So don't, I would not recommend just think about, you know, all the complex things and thinking, okay, if I would have everything and automation and test plan and checklist and all kind of things, nice and beautiful and super complete, that will be the perfect QA department or the perfect QA solution. Because if we don't use most of the things, or if there are easier way to do, why not, right? Because then we can spend more time in just doing some exploratory, learning more, thinking about non-functional tests, etc., etc. Testing levels and testing types. So now going to functional and non-functional tests, as I was saying. So, for example, what level of testing do we need to implement? Most of the times, as I said before, developers already have some unit tests. At least I really hope that they do have. Although quite frequently I see that people that are recruiting for QA engineers, they also request the ability to write unit tests. But from my experience, most of the times I hand over that to my devs. Integration, sometimes it can be, for me, it's a gray zone. So it can be either for QAs or for developers. It also depends really on the product and are we working in the microservices or not, but at least unit tests. So what do we need to guarantee? And for example, will end-to-end test make sense to us? Do we really need an end-to-end? And what are the constraints again, right? Because, for example, if I really depend on an external provider, my example now, for example, I have a platform that is testing that I receive signals from vehicles all over the world, and then I process them, and then I do an API with that. Okay, that just sends all the signals nice and beautiful to another stakeholder. So I cannot have vehicles running all the time, so maybe I'll just mock that, right? So how can I guarantee that I will have end-to-end? Maybe just an overkill again, maybe just crazy to try to tackle things that I cannot, or that will be a huge effort to me, to my team. I will need to buy probably some simulators and things like that. So maybe just mocking that part and then testing onwards would help. Of course, at some point we will need to test in the field and guarantee that things go smoothly, but do I really need to do that test run like every night and send, I don't know, just a truck going around in circles every night for me to be able to test? Probably not. So levels of testing, and of course types of testing, and this is also very important, and I feel that sometimes we do not think that much about that. So first thing that people usually think, QAs usually think when I say testing, or we need to write tests, is about functional testing. But sometimes it might happen that non-functional testing is even more important than functional. And for example, from the previous workshop that we had, it was a great example. What if I'm developing an application that it's somehow intended to help to people that are colorblind or that are blind at all, right? So maybe we need to think about also non-functional right at the beginning. So those are the things that we need to define right from the beginning. What are our priorities, what test levels we will have, and what test types we will have. Will we cover also the performance, the security, mutation? Maybe security is super important if you are in a banking solution, and that's one of the top priorities in the same step as functional testing. So again, we need really to think about what kind of solution, resources we have, and based on that, make our decision. And then, of course, the workflow. So when will we test? And I also noticed that most of you wrote this down in our word cloud. So great, exactly. We need to understand what is our step-to-step. I have here an example of a step-to-step, but you can have any, as long as it suits you and your team, and you feel that you know exactly what you're doing. So do we write the story before? Do we write the test before? For example, I have implemented one time a workflow where first thing to do is to guarantee that PO writes the documentation for the product. And as soon as this is tackled, I jump in. And last meetings that we have, I already have me and PO, we both are attending with the client so that I can write the test right away while I'm sitting next to client and validating. So do you want to have this like in red, right? Okay. And if you click here, you're expected to this, right? And what if I register with the wrong email? So this was the workflow that I implemented. I just inverted things. And we see that quite often nowadays. It wasn't like an invention, but we need to understand what will be our workflow so that everyone knows when exactly they need to push the QA. Is it in the beginning? Is it after the development? Is it before the deploy? Or is it like 2 days before the go live and you spent 48 hours just testing like crazy? So these are the 8 pillars that I think that we should guarantee as first QA, as a QA director, QA engineer, anything in a project where we are starting from zero. So is it ready now? Yes. So you can eat the dish, but we can also add some seasoning. There are a lot of things, interesting things that are out there right now and that we see, and I don't know, risk storming. So if you are doing risk-based testing, maybe you can add risk storming sessions with your developers and ask in the beginning what can go wrong and start tackling your tests from there. Chaos engineering, mutation testing, mind mapping. I love doing mind maps, and that's usually where I begin. I just start drawing things, what we need, what do I have, where we're standing now, and trying to move on from there. And it helps just to advocate the QA that I'm defining and explain to everyone where is what and at which stage we are tackling it. So let's go to an example. I have a mural link here. Varis, maybe you can help me sharing.
I have just sent it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So you probably will see, we still have some time. So you'll see probably a mural with an example of a product, okay, where we don't have any UI, we have only APIs. And we need to guarantee that we think about testing. And you see 6 parts, 6 fields, and you can use a different color from other people and just add sticky notes to each part. So what are the 6 things that you would think about for this product in terms of the QA? For example, I will start by designing the test. And my test approach will be, I don't know, BDD. I will start to then create the workflow, and I will start with the shift left testing, and then I will do my test before code. So how would you approach this, and what are the constraints that you feel we have here? Let me see whether I can quickly jump also to the mural here just to help you and guide you a little bit more. Okay, this one needed more. Okay, so just feel free to add sticky notes. And so imagine I hire you to super project. I'm offering a huge amount of money and say, okay, it's all yours. I have this product. It's a mid-stage. We have like 3 to 6 months to go live. Just guarantee that we test it. What would you do? We have 5 devs in the team, we have 1 PO, and we have you as a QA guru, and we have another person that we can hire just tomorrow, whenever you want. And again, we have an API, and the main constraint, and remember, I told we need to understand what are the constraints. The main constraint is that each time we deliver something, we go super happy to our stakeholder, we show it, and he says, yeah, this is what I wanted, but it's not exactly that one. I wanted this API just to send a different format. And I wanted this signal to be like a string, not a number, and things like that. So how would we overcome this? Okay. Let me go back to the presentation. I'll give you a couple of minutes to tackle this. I want to
Lina, I
listen.
think it would be good if you just give us an explanation, because I'm trying to add the sticky notes, but not so sure why it's not allowing.
Oh, really? I have, yeah, so anyone, visitors can, anyone with the link can edit. I don't know. Okay. Well, maybe then we saying that people have access, and I see 47 people here. But thank you for the heads up. Well, that's what happens when you try to test things by yourself, right? And you, I tested it, but apparently I had the master user that was able. Give me just 1 minute to see whether I can quickly edit it. If not, maybe, I don't know, I will try to ask you to just participate in the chat. Maybe we can go that way. Yeah, because it says that anyone that has the link is supposed to be able to edit. Okay, never mind. Let's maybe then forget about our mural. Maybe you can write on the chat. I will just quickly open it so that I can see. So can you please write some thoughts? I know that it won't be as nice and pretty, not that straightforward here in the chat, but maybe you can just write your thoughts. So what the test approach would you do? What would be the first thing that you would tackle, and we will move from there. Maybe that would be easier, because for some reason mind mapping, although I love it, today is not working for me. Okay, so we're starting to have some answers. First of all, find existing documentation. Yes, that makes sense, of course. Also, if somebody wants just to unmute yourself, feel free. I love listening to people. And I'm introducing some cows to this workshop, I know. As a good QA, I already broke the system of workshop presentations, and I'm just doing things as not expected. Okay, first thing first, recent updated documentation. Okay, yes, definitely we need to understand what we have in place. And the documentation will help us for different purposes. So will help us first understand what we are building in, at which stage we are, what environments we have, etc., etc. So the documentation is a key to guarantee that we already can answer to at least half of our questions, right? Then getting all the information from BA and PM, of course, about the feature project, definitely. Yes. What about the fact that we are building an API, and every time we go to our stakeholder, we have this problem? Okay, we already know that, and we read that on our documentation. We have our API, we know exactly what we are building. We know already that we have 6 months to go live. What about our challenge here? Can we help somehow this company? We have 5 devs that work hard every sprint. They deliver amazing product, but there are some changes that we need to do every time, and then we need to update the test because we write the test according to what they develop, and then we find out that things are not exactly what were expected from us. Okay, understanding the client's desire about automation manual percentage. Okay, that's an interesting thing. Usually, I have to be honest, I usually never ask the client, well, in consultancy, yes. In the product company, do not, about their desire in terms of the automation and manual. It really depends on which side you are, but that makes sense. Okay. Training sessions for the QAs to learn the architecture of the system. Right. Yes, from the team. Okay. Because there are 2 of you and you need to learn. Makes sense. Okay. What about our challenge? How we can, okay, we found the documentation, we learned about the architecture, but then we have still this challenge that devs write code, we write tests based on what they've developed, based on those APIs. We test it, it goes all perfectly. We go super happy to our customer and he says, yeah, it's like 80% of what I wanted. Can you just please change this and that and that and that? And then we go back and we have another sprint of, instead of going to backlog, we just tackle those changes. Discussion with other testers, maybe I've missed something on test coverage. Okay, yes. Okay, makes sense. Being in constant interaction with the client, right? That makes sense. And I kind of spoiled my solution. Of course, there's no universal solution again. There's no one key or one size fits all, of course. But my approach would be one that I've already mentioned before throughout this workshop. So, okay, we still have some time. I'll give maybe 2 more minutes for you to write some answers. We're almost at the end of the presentation, but I just wanted to have this practical example. So we have 2 QAs. We already checked the documentation. We learn about our product. We know exactly where we are standing, what we are delivering, why we are delivering. Customers are super happy to pay for our product, but they just want constant changes. How would you do your test approach? Deciding the test coverage and which test is done by whom. Yes, split to 2 teams and the one can overtake the change requests. Okay, nice one. Great. So we have, for now, we join the project. We first read the documentation. We learn about our product. Then we talk to PMs and business analysts, and we try to learn even more about our product. So we know exactly where we are standing, what are the resources, stage, what the product is, etc., etc. We know we have all the information. We also know our constraints and challenges. We know more or less we're starting to shape what we want to achieve, what the goal of QA is. Then we decide on the coverage. We discuss with testers. We split into teams. Okay, that's nice. But what about the test approach? What about the workflow? When will you test it? Will you test it after the development? Will you retest every time that we go back from our client and they need changes? Will you do only the change testing? So whenever there's a change in code you test, or will you write the test plan during the development? How would you do that? Especially 36% of people that already did that before. We really want to know your feedback. Okay, I have been working as an outsourcing company, do not have access to the customer directly. Okay, that is one of the constraints that is super important to have in mind whenever we define a strategy, of course. Sometimes we have lack of documentation. Yes, it is necessary to have a contact person to find out key points for the every beginning. Here, checklists, based on user stories for developers can really help? Yes, that's an amazing answer. Love it. All of them are, but that was what I would do. That there's no correct or wrong answers, of course. We are superhumans, all the QA, so any implementation, I'm pretty sure is good because we prevent bugs. We prevent our customers suffering from bugs, so we are superhumans already. We are starting to test when UX documents are ready. Great, amazing, yes, start testing. But we don't have UX, we have APIs. Yeah, we have some user experience, but it's not on the UI perspective. But yes, sure, start testing from the backend whenever there's something functional. Right. First test the stories themselves with the PO. Amazing, yes, definitely. From the client present, just to be on the same side with. Definitely. So what would I do? I would do exactly this. And actually, I did something. I had a similar challenge, not exactly this, but I had a similar challenge. And what I did, I implemented ATTD, because if we cannot tackle the communication and there's a problem in communication between the client, PO, and the devs, and somewhere each step we go, we miss a piece of information. Then I started writing tests based on what client would expect. And we've implemented ATTD with Karate. Karate DSL is a tool similar to Cucumber. It doesn't matter the tooling itself because we have tons of different tools. But for me, it was useful because it didn't have that Java layer that Cucumber has. So Karate is super easy and my POs could read. So even if I could not attend the meeting, because not all the time clients want to see anybody else but the PO or the PM, they could read easily the test. So they knew exactly what it was expected and what was written. And whenever they would meet with the customer, they would say, okay, so you want this? Okay, right. So we are guaranteeing that we receive the signal and we send it in JSON. Is it correct? And they would either confirm or just they would say right away. So we had the tests. Those tests were validated both by the POs and by the client. We had, with this, we had our living documentation. So our tests were the state of truth for the team, kind of, and it's super hard to maintain that. That is true. Crazy. I don't know. I don't know how POs can do. We deal with so many documents at the same time in Confluence. But yes, so that was our living documentation. Whenever we had a meeting with the customer, we started with that question, and at some point they already learned that we have tests. So they was like, okay, I'm expecting this and that. And I even had one customer that started to look at my tests and start suggesting me things. And I was like, okay, maybe you can validate here something else. And I was like, okay, cool, amazing. I have also my customers joining to the dark side of QA. Great. And my work is being facilitated. Amazing. So after that, my developers would just pull the tests and they start to develop and run tests, develop and run tests. And once the tests are green, you are good to deliver the feature. Of course, we are tackling only the critical parts, the happy parts, some negative scenarios. Of course, we need to then think about performance testing. Of course, we need to think about accessibility in case it needed, or security. I had to implement fast testing, mutation testing, but I had time for that because my job was done at some point, right? I had a guarantee that everything that customer would look for once we deliver the API is there, is validated by him, and was developed by the developers exactly as he requested. And I had all that time just to have fun and do exploratory tests, implement security testing, implementing fast tests, implement different layers, functional and non-functionals, doing exploratory nice checklist, writing the documentation, all those things. I was not a bottleneck anymore. All the acceptance criteria was tackled by the automated tests that were already delivered before the development. Okay, let me see. We review the stories with the PO, BR, devs, and QAs. Yes, definitely communication is key, and that is one of our most the greatest superpower that QA has is the communication. I used to have a QA in my team that she used to say that we are like ducks, because we do a little bit of everything. Like ducks, you know, they swim a little bit, they fly just a tiny bit, and then they do a little bit of everything. And QAs is the same. So we need to know how to code a little bit. As long as you're not dedicated automation engineer, then you need to know how to code like pretty well. We should know about the business, we should know about the coding, we should know about the testing, the strategy, and a little bit of everything. So of course, communication is key and is one of our superpowers. Okay, in my current project, as we implemented the DevOps approach, testing is always done along the development. Amazing, great. Yeah, I want to work in your team or with your team. Always QA people should review the analysis functional document and it's ready to test. Yes, should ask the pre-test checklist questions. Definitely. Entry criteria, checklist, what we are trying to deliver. Did we understand it well? Because that is also important. Sometimes we just write things down, meaning one thing, and then the person that reads it can have a completely different understanding. I would rather be a swan. Thank you. I will not call us ducks anymore. I will call us swans. We are swans. Definitely love it. Thank you so much. The biggest challenge for me when devs move tickets ready to test before all work have been completed. I'm assuming it is ready to test on front end side, but sometimes they say, I know, sorry, it was still in review. Yes, my approach of, shifting the responsibility of testing to them was also helpful in that case, definitely, because they knew that they can only rely on exploratory tests on that feature whenever all the test suite is green. But yes, that is something that you can advocate, you can teach, and we are good communicators and we are good teachers and we can teach. And I will tackle this right now. Let me quickly move forward. I had another example, but due to time, let's move. It was a voice assistant app for blind people. You can spend some 10 minutes at the end of today just thinking how would you implement a strategy for that, and you can share that with me on LinkedIn or email. I'll leave my contacts at the end. So we have our strategy, and now we are starting to think. Strategies basically mostly a document, right? And we know what to do and we have documented it. Now let's go to actually implementing things. So let's define the ceremonies. And you don't need exactly to join the office room with nice chartboards where you can just, I don't know, present and draw and do everything. For example, in my first team, QA team that I had, I used to do picnics with them. And for me, it proved to be more fruitful just to sit down with them and talk and say, look, I have this problem that I don't know exactly our coverage and I have no clue how we can figure out, because we started to the QA department 3 years. The product had already 3 years and it was already 3 years live, so in production. So I don't know how I can do that. So what do you think? And that brainstorming sessions, and then we started to bring some paper, actual paper and pens, and we start to draw while we were sitting in a nice garden. And it happened to me to be more fruitful. Of course, during the winter, we would go to a coffee shop, but just not having that sense of, okay, we are in an office. Of course, today the remote, of course, there are companies that require us to be in a office, but you don't need to think about ceremonies as you usually think about them. It's okay if you just do things differently, as long as it works for you. Because why? Again, our superpower is communication, and anything that can enable our communication and just make our communication more direct, more inspiring, bring more ideas, think outside the box, anything would just work. Even if that is, I don't know, bringing some jellies to the meeting. I did that also once and it worked well. Everyone was so excited about the jellies. In the beginning, we had a sugar rush, and then we started to brainstorm, and it was great. So it really up to you. Start thinking how you will do the brainstorming sessions, how you will share the successes among the team, how you will plan and identify the challenges, especially, for example, in those setups where you have, like, for example, you are running a department of QAs, or you are a test manager for a team of QAs, but then every QA is allocated to a specific project or product, and you need then to have like a common ground to all of them, but then each one of them has its own reality within the agile team, right? What if some of them already had the problem that you are having right now? Or what if some of them already had the solution? So having these sessions of the knowledge sharing is important. Also, what if some of them go to, I don't know, maternity leave, to vacations? It will be easier to hand over once you know, and once you have more or less the same structure among all the teams. Then share the success, and this is critical because we humans really are dependent on success. So that instant gratification that we receive, okay, I did something, and I feel that each time I need to code, I code and it's not working, it's not even building. I got frustrated, like, why did I pick this job? I hate everything about IT, I don't like technology, why I'm here? I was supposed to cut corpses, why I'm doing this? And then, like, it starts to build, and then it starts to run tests, and then at some point I have all tests passing, and I feel like I'm the best in this world, and this is my place. I was meant to be a QA engineer. So sharing the success is super important for us, and share that also among the team. I bribe them to collaborate, definitely. Then plan and identify next challenges. So, okay, guys, we are implementing now API testing, but next we need to guarantee that performance tests are in place. Do we have a tool for that? What will be our next challenges? How we can simulate such amount of requests? And of course, this is helpful for team bonding. I bribe them, but team bonding is important. And if, I don't know, a couple of jellies can help me with that, why not? I mean, right? Okay, then prepare the documentation. And remember, documentation is important, and it's cool that we have our documentation complete, but we really need to remember that we need to allocate time to it. It's not something that we write once and it's valid for our entire life. So the test strategy, test approach, the responsibilities, they might shift, they might change. Of course, if we don't have the communication problem with our stakeholders, maybe we don't need that ATTD anymore. Maybe we don't need that regression suite anymore because that feature was gone. And now we might think about something else. So prepare the documentation and remember to review it. Define the test, so writing actual tests, right? Either it is manual test, automated test, checklist, with the knowledge that we have right now, right? So how to decide what we should test and how we should test. We already know that maybe, yes, we will have a regression automation, and then we will have just a checklist for exploratory testing, for example. Tooling. There are a lot of different tools, and there is no tool that is better than the other. Of course, there are people that say, oh yeah, Selenium is the best tool for the automation. Is it? It depends. It depends on what we need. But now you know, now you have everything in place, structured, you know what exactly kind of tests you have. For example, if you're trying to automate, I don't know, streaming, again, going back to the video streaming, maybe there's a tool that is better to do that, right? That is more suitable. So we can think again, according to our necessities and not according to what we are used to do or according to what we know already. Of course, for example, when I joined my last project, I knew Selenium, I knew Python, I knew Java, but then I found out that Karate was the best thing to me, and I evaluated the learning curve. It was okay. In 2 weeks, I could write some good tests. Okay, Brett, let's go for it because it's more suitable to what I need. I can implement Kafka streams. I can implement event hubs. I can implement this and that. So sure, let's do it. And of course, test management tools. Will we have them? When? At which point? Which tool? Will we keep there the reporting? Will we keep there the testing, the manual only, or both test plans? So decide on all the tooling. Advocate, this is the key. So to all of you that mentioned that, yes, there is a problem with the devs that go back and forth. Yes, there is. We need to preach. We need to preach our mission. We need to explain why QA is important. Yes, we're living the best times of QA engineering because nowadays everyone wants and needs QA engineers. But still, most of them are looking for QA engineers because everyone does. What is the value that we bring? And we bring tons of value. And when, for example, for development, it's more direct. You can see, okay, they develop, I don't know, a web page, and you can see that there's a web page. You can click, you can navigate, you have a menu. Awesome. You can see exactly what was the value that they brought. For QA, that is not that straightforward. And if you need to explain, for example, there's a good metric for systems in production that is a defect escape rate that I use to preach the importance of QA. For example, I said, okay, before we had a QA department, we used to have seven bugs open from the customer side per week. Now we have one. So yes, our tests are working. We are improving. That less 6 bugs means that we have less customer support people wasting time, investing time on answering our clients and explaining, analyzing, checking the logs. That will go there for now, and we need to automate, and we need to think why that happened, and to our devs to fix that and go back and forth. We reduce the feedback loop. Once the developer has their code, they can directly test it. So we are saving tons of time with that. So feel free to advocate. It is really important to show your value. And sometimes that is not as straightforward, but communication is our superpower. Don't forget that. So communicate and show. And even if you sometimes need to show off a little bit, just do it. Define the CI/CD. So of course, how this then will work in our continuous delivery, continuous integration. Will we have the pipelines? Will we test manually on each release? How this will work? And this again depends now on the other teams that you might have and other things that you have on your company. And define the tests again. So, okay, we tackled the most critical things. What about usability? What about performance? What about scalability? What about stress testing, security? Do we need to add anything more? Will we tackle this manually? Should we also automate once we have everything automated? So once you have your critical parts covered, then we can think about extra nice things for seasoning our tests. And metrics, what is relevant. And usually we have that pie charts with metrics like 78% passed and then the rest failed. If you don't look at it, that means nothing. If you don't have any real customers, that means nothing. If you are working on an internal software, maybe that means nothing. So we really need to think what can be relevant, right? Defect escape rate, again, if we develop something, one tool that is for internal use, but it's not still even being used in our company, but we do test on them and we see that, okay, we have the defect escape rate of 6. It's a cool metric, but it says nothing to us because we don't have real customers. We have our bunch of developers that do that for something. So it is really important to what can just move us forward and help us being better, bringing more value to the business, reducing costs, and make the life of our customers less annoying. Because it's annoying when you try to access something and it doesn't work or just throws you a silly error or something like that. And that's it. So as I've said, thank you to everyone that was with me today. I hope that, we have still 5 minutes. Sorry for this. Sorry?
You were just on time. Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry for this mural thing, but we managed with the chat, and feel free to also reach out to me on any of these platforms. I will gladly share more insights if I can, or learn something from you, of course.
Thank you so much, Lina. Thanks for it was really nice, interactive. You talked about so many critical things. I cannot agree more. So it was really nice. Maybe we will see you with your workshops from now on. I don't know. Let's see what will happen.
Thank you. I would love it, of course. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the
Thank you.
participation for all the people who are here. I think 4:40, we will be going back with continuing with a keynote session in the main hall. So, but we have 1 or 2 minutes left. If we have questions from Elif, there are several questions. Lina, if you can see that from the
Sure.
chat, maybe you can just answer some, and then I'm going to terminate this room and we will go back to the main hall.
Yes, let me just quickly see. Okay, so yeah, what is the difference between software test engineer and software quality assurance engineer? Does QA review and check the test cases that is already developed by the testers? What is the place of the software tester in this process? To be honest, that's one of the most challenging things that I've found out to define in my career is what we actually are, because there are different namings. And even if I would say, okay, difference between software test engineer and software quality assurance engineer is this one, it doesn't necessarily mean that the companies that will recruit software test engineer would mean the same. And this is something that is somehow hard to define exactly what you expected. They give us so many different names, but at the end of the time, we have one big mission of guaranteeing that we have happy customers and functional and communicating teams. So yeah, we can discuss that, of course, but it really depends on what expectation the company puts on you. And this is most important, is to align with the company that is hiring you, that you're working for.
Yeah, in addition, a sensitive question. No one can assure quality, my friends. So no one individual person can assure quality. How can you do that? Is it something that's light, or is it something that not that important or not spread? So you need to, for me, quality assurance is just a fancy name you give to a software tester. Quality could be built. When I ask people, how do you handle quality, or how do you do quality assurance? They are telling me we are doing testing. Yeah, but testing is detection. Quality assurance is prevention. So in order to assure quality, you need to prevent bugs. In order to prevent bugs, everyone should work. So from that perspective, for me, everyone is a QA, including the developers, project managers, the Scrum Masters, everyone. So quality assurance is just, how can you assure quality without spreading it, the whole responsibility of quality to everyone? I think we can discuss it all day and night and long.
True.
So yeah, maybe next time. Thank you,
But
Lina.
definitely
Again.
quality is everyone's responsibility. So, and
yeah,
that's why
quality
advocate is
cannot
so
be assured. Cannot be assured. So it's just, we need to know that. Cannot be tested also. Quality assurance is not testing. Testing is, yeah, detection. The other one is some other thing. So let's go back to the main hall now. We have 10 minutes break to prepare ourselves, and we will be there. Thank you again, everyone in this room, and I will see you in a couple of minutes in the main hall.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.